Good evening. It is 7:30. So we will get started on time. I am going to just ask everyone to keep themselves muted. There's a lot of people on the Zoom. We're also streaming this to YouTube and Facebook. And both of those platforms should capture this as a recording. So it should be immediately available for replay after we're finished. If you have a question, we're monitoring the chat on all three of the platforms here on Zoom and YouTube and Facebook. So you can, I just ask that you type your question into one of those chats, and we might slide it in as we go along or save it for the end in a Q&A. So thank you for everyone who has joined. Hopefully this is useful to everyone and will give us some direction. There's still a lot that needs to be determined, but it will hopefully provide some direction as we kind of prepare for the legislative session that starts January 8th. So I am going to start off by just praying real quick, and then we will jump in. So, Father, I thank you for everyone that has gathered and for the strength of the pro-life movement in Missouri and the strength of the grassroots in Missouri. We thank you, even though we lost this opening battle on Amendment 3, we thank you for the opportunity and the invitation from you to come and fight alongside of you and to partner with you and your heart for the unborn. Bless our time this evening. Give us wisdom, even reveal additional direction, and just bless our time this evening. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, I'm going to jump straight over to this PowerPoint here. And mostly you're not going to see me, you're going to see this PowerPoint as we kind of walk through this. So a little bit about me. I love Jesus, and I've been married for 24 years. This is, you can't see her now, but my beautiful wife is sitting next to me. And together we have 10 children, 2 of whom are in eternity. We've had 2 miscarriages. So we have 8 living children. 3 of our 10 children are adopted. I run a small business, and that small business has given me the luxury the last couple of months to focus a lot on Amendment 3. Been involved in pro-life ministry for 17 years. In 2007, my wife and I started the St. Louis chapter of Bound for Life. In 2012, we were moved to regional coordinators for Bound for Life, and then this last summer moved up to national director, Bound for Life. So I'll take a moment and just talk about Bound for Life. It was started in 2004 on the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court. We are a prayer movement for the ending of abortion. We're the people that wear red tape on our mouths with the word life written on it and pray primarily in front of government buildings, but also abortion clinics. There are chapters all across the United States. As I mentioned, we started our chapter in 2007 in the St. Louis area. There's a chapter over in Kansas City. So there's 2 chapters in the state of Missouri. And the ministry itself is still headquartered in D.C. They still siege at the U.S. Supreme Court, as well as a Planned Parenthood that's there on Capitol Hill, and occasionally other government buildings. It's a target-rich environment there. Lots of government buildings to pray for in D.C. So the ministry is still headquartered there, but I reside in Missouri, and so Amendment 3 has been of particular importance. I should also note that Bound for Life, because it was born on the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court, it is particularly government focused. So we pray for life issues, but particularly in the arena of government, paying attention to what's going on in federal court systems, and because I'm and the legislative branch federally, and generally what's going on with the issue of life in government. And then since I'm a resident of Missouri, I'm paying attention to what's going on in Missouri, in Jefferson City, in our court system. The 8th Circuit Court of Appeals is primarily where we spend our time praying. That is downtown St. Louis on 10th Street, and it sits one step below the Supreme Court. So just paying attention to government for almost 2 decades, in both federally and in the state of Missouri, has been helpful as Amendment 3 has rolled around, and understanding some of the ins and outs of how government works. For the past several years, I also spend 1 day a week in Jefferson City during the legislative session. My primary mission there is to pray. I prayer walk the halls of government, and then I meet with legislators or staff and try to help move pro-life legislation along in the Capitol building there. So that is some background on Bound for Life. So we need to talk about what happened. Obviously, it was a disappointment for probably everyone on this call. But there is actually a lot to be positive about. Obviously, the big one, losing, is the one not to be positive about. But, I was really crestfallen on Wednesday and Thursday, just kind of bummed out about it. And then Thursday afternoon, I really kind of started to take a step back and look at some things, and start to look toward the future. And there is some silver lining and some things to be positive about. Amendment 3 was the second most voted thing on our ballot. For most of you, and probably most parts of the state, the ballot was a very large ballot, both front and back. Every statewide office was up for election. We have a senator to vote on, obviously the president, 5 amendments plus a proposition, and then if you were in a locality, you probably had more local issues to vote on as well. So 2 very full, very large pieces of paper, or a single piece of paper, front and back. And generally what happens is people start at the top. They're going to start with president, mark their choice, move down to the next one, and they work front to back. And as they do that, the number of votes that are cast for each element that goes down is generally reduced, because people get bored, they get down to the judges and they don't know what to do, and so they kind of stop at that point, or they haven't done the research down ballot enough to really have answers. And so as you proceed down the ballot, the number of votes cast for each thing becomes less and less. Well, that was not true with Amendment 3, which was, for me, halfway through the backside of the ballot. And I think for most people was halfway through the backside of the ballot. And Amendment 3 was second only to U.S. President in votes. It received more votes than U.S. Senator, more votes than our governor or any statewide office, which is an indication that Missouri voters were truly paying attention to Amendment 3. It was very much on their radar. They were very aware that this was an important element. And given that it was second, it literally means in some cases people voted for President of the United States, turned it over, voted for Amendment 3, and that was all they voted on. So that's actually encouraging that the value of life is important enough to a lot of Missouri voters, and that the issue of the preborn is important regardless of which side of the issue you fall. Important enough that Missouri voters were very much paying attention to that. We narrowly lost 60,000 votes. It's actually a little bit less than 60,000 votes. If they had switched from a yes to a no, it would have lost. I took a look at all 7 states that had abortion on the ballot that lost. It was on the ballot in 10 states. 3 of them successfully defeated their amendment, and 7, including Missouri, lost their effort at protecting the preborn. But all of those other states, the margins were much wider than they were in Missouri, like 10 double-digit margins in every other state where it lost, except Missouri, where 60,000, a little less than 60,000 votes, or 1.6% of the vote. If it had changed from a yes to a no, we would have defeated that. So it was extremely close, and that, I believe, is a testament to the strength of the grassroots and pro-life movements in Missouri. We were outspent almost 10-1. The other side had something like $32 million, and our side raised a little over $3 million. So we were outspent 10-1, and yet the margins were razor thin. If you compare that to Ohio, I've got Ohio's numbers up there from last year. The pro-death side raised $20 million, and the pro-life side about $15 million. And they lost by a 6.6% margin that needed to flip. So they were almost even in dollars, and they lost by 6.6%. We were outspent 10-1, and we only lost by 1.6%. So I find that very encouraging that that the grassroots was so active, and the pro-life community was so active on this, and that we were able to spread the word very widely across Missouri. And we really need to build on that going forward. We need to retain a lot of that energy moving into the legislative session. And so there will be some asks that I'll talk about tonight a little bit, and then coming down the road, there's some unknowns. We don't know when the asks are going to happen, but we need to build on that energy to make sure that our legislature stays on task this next legislative session. Geographically, you can see that it's 7 counties and 1 city, because St. Louis City is not in a county. But if I could just count 8 out of the 115 counties, if I count St. Louis City as a county, even though technically it's not. 8 out of 115 counties voted a majority yes. The other 107 counties in Missouri all voted no, a majority no. And you can see that from the graphic, from the color coordination there, how strongly it was a yes or no. And we're really talking about Columbia, the counties surrounding Kansas City, and the counties surrounding St. Louis, the metropolitan areas. So that's kind of a quick look at how some of the demographics played out in Amendment 3 and the vote counts. One of the things that I think, just in an honest assessment, I'm glad President Trump was elected, but some of the things that he said on the campaign trail, just as an honest assessment, gave a segment of his supporters permission to be pro-choice. And we can see that in that Trump won by 287,000 votes And if just 60,000 of those 287,000 had switched from a yes to a no, we would have been able to defeat Amendment 3. And so it's unfortunate, and I hope the Lord begins to turn his heart toward a more pro-life position, and we should definitely be praying into that. Pray for your leaders, 1 Timothy 2. Pray for kings and those in authority. It's one of our primary mandates in prayer as Christians. Okay, so the aftermath of Amendment 3. When will the murder start? Is, for lack of a better title to give this slide. So the county machines were still warm when Planned Parenthood filed their suit. So I think it was by about noon on Wednesday, November 6th, Planned Parenthood had filed suit to begin to open up Missouri back for killing in our state. And it should be noted that the amendment goes into our Constitution 30 days after passage. So this amendment, while passed, isn't technically a part of our Constitution until December 5th. But they're not waiting until December 5th to file their suit. So they started their lawsuit. Key points that on the lawsuit, they are wanting to remove health department oversight. There's a number of things specifically of actually, it's about 100 pages 100-page lawsuit. I read through it the other night just to kind of figure out what they were going after. They're going after a number of health department issues, but they are attempting to remove health department oversight and the laws in Missouri that require oversight by the health department, things like an ambulatory facility, proximity to hospitals, hospital admitting privileges, things like that. They are wanting to remove reporting requirements for injuries. So women, unfortunately, are injured with some frequency. In fact, the Planned Parenthood in St. Louis that I've prayed at often is ranked as one of the most dangerous clinics in the country. They unfortunately, when they were operational doing surgical abortions, had ambulances pulling to the parking lot on a frighteningly frequent basis. But they want to remove any reporting mechanisms on the injuries that they create. So they want to hide how dangerous this is for women. They want to remove a requirement that physicians perform abortions, so they're wanting it to open it up so that any healthcare professional will be able to perform an abortion. They are wanting to remove restrictions on telemedicine, so they want to be able to do telemedicine abortions. They're wanting to remove restrictions on race and sex selective abortions. So this would allow people to, in what is actually true misogyny, choose to abort girls just because they're girls and they want boys, or abort black children because they don't want a black child. So they are seeking to make it legal to do race and sex selective abortions. It's in their lawsuit. And the last thing I have on here is they're wanting to remove all of the existing gestational restrictions on abortion. And by removing all of those restrictions, it would mean abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy. So all of the things that we were saying to people, not all of them, there are actually more than this, but all of these things listed are things we were saying to people that this amendment would allow, and they claimed, they lied the entire time and said, no, this is only about abortion through viability. Well, it's not. They're wanting to remove all of the gestational restrictions and allow abortions through all 9 months of pregnancy. They said that, well, this isn't about, this is about protecting women's health. Well, no, what if it's about protecting women's health? Why are you trying to remove the reporting mechanisms when women are injured? So, yeah, it is. They are moving quickly to do the things that they said wasn't in it, but it's very clear now they knew all along it was in it, and it's in black and white in a lawsuit at this point. So that hearing is scheduled currently for February 27th. It is over in Jackson County court in Kansas City. And being as Bound for Life is a prayer ministry, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, but be praying for that case. That case is going to be heard at this point, February 27th. And we want to be praying that just delay. The longer this lawsuit takes, the longer it is until they can start killing children again in Missouri. So the more this thing is bound in courts, the more delays that can be introduced in the process, appeals in the process. Anything that delays the process is a good thing for the preborn, because it means more children will be born alive and not killed. So please be praying against these cases, and that they just they take a long time. It would be great if this case took another year and we could get another amendment on the ballot to reverse Amendment 3 before the cases were done. And the other thing that should be noted is that Planned Parenthood has publicly said this. I've got a screenshot of this story, but if you actually read the story that's on the Missouri Independent, they admit that there are more lawsuits coming. So this is the first salvo in eliminating restrictions on abortion in Missouri, and they're not going after parental consent right now, but there are more lawsuits coming, and things like that are probably going to be addressed in future lawsuits.
Okay, so we have a question in the chat that Planned Parenthood claims they're going to start doing abortions on December 5th. Are they working on getting a stay from the court to be able to start operating or open their clinics?
Yeah. Well, right now, the court dockets say that the hearing is scheduled for February 27th. So if that holds and aren't able to move it, then they would not be able to start abortions on December 5th, because they need a court to issue an injunction against the existing Missouri laws, so that they can start to do their abortions. So I guess there's the court could choose to move the hearing. That is something that happens occasionally, but as of right now, it is scheduled for February 27th. So hopefully it stays that way, and even further delays, and they're not able to start sooner.
Okay, and we have another question about, I believe this is about the petition that's been kind of floated online that's asking for signatures as a way to fight back against Amendment 3, that talks about, let me see what this says here. Women were confused and deceived by the lies that Missouri does not have miscarriage care or exceptions for abortions and emergencies. And there is currently a online petition floating around. My understanding is that is not like legally binding. It's not really an amendment that is being worked on. It's just kind of I'm not exactly even sure what this petition would accomplish, but
yeah,
can you address that? And then questions about if we do something in the future. This will probably be addressed later, but in the future, if we try to do something to reverse Amendment 3, will there be anything about protections for mothers in a counter amendment that is drafted?
Okay, the change.org petition, I don't think it hurts to sign it. I haven't done a deep dive on change.org. My understanding is they are a for-profit company owned by some liberals. So, sign it with a grain of salt. There's nothing that's really actionable there. The only benefit of a petition like that would be to help convince legislators later this spring that there was a lot of people in Missouri that wanted them to do something about Amendment 3. But honestly, I don't know that petition, it might help in some small way. What's going to be more important is direct contact with your legislators, an email, a phone call, showing up in Jefferson City. Those things are going to mean far more to the legislators than an online petition. So I don't think it hurts. I don't know that it has a huge benefit. Is that... Did you say there was another question there?
Somebody asks who wrote the amendment. It was very poorly written. We are aware. Were they Missouri citizens? The person that put the amendment forward was a doctor. Her name is Dr. Anna Fitzjames. She is I don't believe she's practicing any longer, but she was a pediatrician in the St. Louis area, which is egregious to me that a pediatrician who cares for children would get behind this horrible amendment.
And I would push back a little bit and say on that it was poorly written. I don't think it was poorly written. I think it was intentionally written wickedly. And they... I've talked to a couple of attorneys about some of the language, and their comments are that it's actually very well written if your goal is unfettered access to abortion in Missouri and gender transitions on kids in Missouri. It's actually really well written. And that's a problem for us because they did not leave much room for the legislature to do anything through statute, through our laws. They wrote it well enough that there's not a lot of room for laws to be passed that restrict abortion in Missouri. Really our only recourse in this is another constitutional amendment that reverses Amendment 3. There might be some very small, narrowly scoped areas where the legislature can do something, but it's unfortunately not going to affect abortion much in Missouri to do some of those small, narrow things through statute.
Yeah, and as far as funding, we had a question about funding. A lot of the funding for the amendment, advertising budget, things promoting the amendment was from out of state.
Yeah, $23 million came from out of state is the last number I heard. So, what is that? About 70% of the money came from out of state. ACLU put in $5 or $6 million themselves. George Soros, Michael Bloomberg, some other Swedish guy. So some of the money didn't even come from this country. Okay. All right, so we already touched on this a little bit. Can it be undone? Yes, it can be. It's going to take a constitutional amendment. And so here's kind of the first action point, and really the first well-known step in this process. So the Senate Majority Leader, current Senate Majority Leader, or not Senate, House Majority Leader is a man by the name of John Patterson. He's from the Kansas City area. He just got reelected for his fourth and final term. And as the floor majority leader, he's presumed to be the next Speaker of the House because the last Speaker of the House has termed out. And so he's kind of the next in line for leadership, presumed to be the next Speaker of the House. However, he has said publicly that you can read that headline there. Missouri GOP leader says legislature must respect outcome of abortion amendment if abortion amendment passes. He's said very publicly. I have a copy of the video. If it's not in this slideshow, but if anyone wants to see it, where he says that he's going to respect the will of the people, and he's not willing to let a countermeasure go forward that would attempt to undo Amendment 3. He is not really a pro-life legislator. He is a Republican, but he's not really pro-life. He's got other questionable things in his voting record. If we want to do something about Amendment 3, he cannot be the Speaker of the House. So there already has been an internal vote, a caucus vote on him, and he passed that. But the official vote for Speaker of the House is an action that occurs with the entire body. So Republicans and Democrats vote together, just like if you remember the fights over Speaker of the House in the federal government over the last 4 years. The entire body votes on Speaker of the House, and it is one of the first actions that occurs on opening day, which will be January 8th of 2025. So nothing is official about him being Speaker of the House. He's just presumed to be the next one. A representative from Wildwood, which is in the St. Louis area, a man by the name of Justin Sparks, has announced in the last few days that he is going to challenge John Patterson for Speaker of the House. I've known his mother. His mother runs a pregnancy resource center and has for about 20 years. I've known her for a while. Justin I've actually only known for a couple of years, but he definitely has a strong pro-life pedigree and has sponsored several pro-life bills in the legislature. He is strongly pro-life, and I would encourage everyone to call their own state rep and ask their state rep to support Justin Sparks for Speaker, because if John Patterson is the Speaker of the House, it will be extremely difficult, if not impossible, to overturn Amendment 3 over the next 2 years, because the Speaker of the House controls what bills and resolutions are heard on the floor of the House. They have complete control over the calendar, and he alone can stand against Amendment 3 as Speaker, and so we cannot have him as Speaker of the House. So that is action item 1.
So we have a question about that.
Mm-hmm.
So Justin has thrown his hat in the ring and has said that he will run for Speaker. Can you speak to why that is important versus us trying to convince somebody else to run for Speaker? Somebody has asked why Justin and why not somebody else?
I honestly, so I was having conversations with other leaders across the state before his announcement, and everyone knew that John Patterson couldn't be Speaker regardless of, so someone needed to challenge him that was pro-life and willing to do something about Amendment 3. So Justin is the only one who has raised his hand and been bold enough to challenge for Speaker. There's a huge amount of risk because, as I just stated, the Speaker of the House controls the calendar, and leadership. I would. I'm hearing that the threats are already being made, but leadership for many, many years in the House has always had a very heavy-handed attitude towards other legislators that they do not like, that do not fall in line and obey the leadership. So by sticking his hand up and saying that he wants to run for Speaker of the House, if he loses in this effort, he can kiss any of his other legislative priorities goodbye for the next 2 years, because leadership will make sure that none of his bills move anywhere and that they all die, as a message to the rest of the House members to never question leadership. So he is risking his ability to do anything for the people that sent him there, by running against the machine and running for speaker. So it's unlikely. Maybe someone else will throw their hat in the ring too for speakership. At this point, I'm not hearing that anyone else is willing to do it. The time is short. So if someone's going to do it, they need to raise their hand pretty quickly, and then we can start to have, I guess, conversation about who's actually better than, which of the 2 or 3 are better than John Patterson. But at this point, with only one alternative, as I said earlier, it cannot be John Patterson. So the alternative at this point is Justin Sparks. Okay, and then the last thing to note here is there are a number of ideas flying around. I've heard at least a dozen different ideas on how to attack Amendment 3. Whether that be a direct one-for-one repeal, like just a complete repeal of Amendment 3 with nothing added, nothing taken away, or an incremental approach where there's an attempt to chip away at it through an amendment that maybe puts some harder boundaries around fetal viability or restricts abortion past the first trimester. There's a bunch of different ideas. Those ideas will begin to coalesce as the legislative session progresses. Some ideas will rise to the top, and some will sink. And I don't know. I don't have a crystal ball to tell you which ones are going to be which. Regardless, the grassroots needs to stay engaged on this, and be willing. I'm going to say willing to go to Jefferson City. I can almost, if John Patterson isn't the Speaker of the House, there's going to be some sort of fight or impasse. I can almost guarantee it in sometime between March and May. And we are ideally going to need 1,000 people in the Capitol building demanding that their legislators move a resolution forward that puts a challenge on Amendment 3 back on our ballot. There will be, as the presumptive speaker, has said, there is a reticence on the part of legislators to, undo the will of the people. They don't want to be seen that way. And that's been proven over the numerous amendments we've made to our Constitution. Legislators might not agree with it, but they tend not to try and touch an amendment that was just passed by the people. There are exceptions. So we had Clean Missouri and then Cleaner Missouri a few years ago. But it does take political willpower, and the grassroots needs to help them with that political willpower. So I can't say exactly when it will be and exactly which bill it will be, but I can almost guarantee that there will be a need and a call put out by hopefully a bunch of pro-life organizations that are working together and pushing in the same direction. And we're going to ask a bunch of people to show up and make their voice heard in the Capitol. So stay connected, stay up to date on what's going on and what's moving. We'll try and make sure that we put out updates frequently on what's moving, and be ready at short notice. Unfortunately, those things are if things go into a hearing, Missouri only requires a 24-hour notice before a committee hearing, and it's usually not much more than 24 hours. You might get 36 hours notice that a committee hearing is happening. So, unfortunately, it does mean sometimes that you got to be ready to just drop everything, and I got to go to the Capitol tomorrow to be in a hearing to make sure that my legislators know I'm in support of this resolution. So. Okay. Potential for federal court challenges. There are 2 legal organizations that I'm aware of right now that are looking at potential challenges in the court. No suits have been filed. I don't know exactly what they're going to land on in terms of what they feel like is they can go after in federal court. Article 6 of the U.S. Constitution is called the Supremacy Clause, and it's loosely it says that the U.S. Constitution is superior to the state constitution, and U.S. law can be superior to state constitutions. There's some nuance there. An example might be the U.S. federal government has banned partial birth abortion. So even if our state constitution allows partial birth abortion, which I believe this amendment would, because of supremacy clause, it should override our state constitution and make that portion of our state constitution invalid against U.S. statute. But we don't have a lot of restriction on abortion at the federal level. Unfortunately, U.S. Congress really hasn't done anything much beyond banning partial birth abortion. So there's not a lot to challenge unless we're talking about things like forced speech, like PRCs they might start requiring PRCs to refer for abortion. They might be able to sue under First Amendment rights because of forced speech. So there are potentially some efforts coming in federal court. They will not affect us too much. There will still be tens of thousands of babies dying in Missouri because of Amendment 3. It will have some but minimal impact if any of those court cases are able to go anywhere. I don't have a slide for this, but I actually see Mark Lee Dixon on the screen, so I'm gonna bring this up. One of the things
Brian actually asked if you could let him share his idea. Mark's idea. Mark was putting his idea in the chat.
Who?
Mark Lee Dixon.
Oh, okay.
Should I unmute him?
Yeah, you want to talk for a minute, Mark? You're not actually. Yeah.
There he goes. Okay.
Howdy.
How's it going?
So, pretty good. Good to join you guys here tonight. I'm actually driving right now to Missouri, and so I'm going to be around there for a good bit. And there is a way to blunt the impact of the amendment, and that is by utilizing the Comstock Act. Comstock Act was passed in 1873, and it prohibits the mailing and receiving of abortion-inducing drugs and abortion paraphernalia. And so basically anything that's utilized for an abortion. So this would be a de facto national abortion ban that could be utilized. Now, what we've done in other places through the Sanctuary Cities for the Unborn Initiative is pass local ordinances go as far as we possibly can go in each jurisdiction. In New Mexico, we knew that we couldn't really pass a Texas-style abortion ban in a city or county. So what we did is we passed ordinances, local ordinances requiring compliance to federal statutes. there was an abortion facility looking at Hobbs, New Mexico, and through the passage of one of these ordinances, we were effective at getting them to cancel their contract and move 5 hours away to Albuquerque, New Mexico. I believe we can do that in cities and counties throughout Missouri. It's just going to take courage from elected officials to do what's right. And I know we talked about Wright City, and I know there's other places. Maybe they have the courage now to revisit this. But if this gets going and it spreads throughout Missouri, then it is going to blunt the impact and perhaps even could lead the state to doing something as well. Just like you said before, all state laws and state constitutions, they must work within the confines of federal statutes, such as the partial birth abortion ban and also the Comstock Act. And the last thing I'll say about that is some people are wondering, well, why haven't we used this before? Under Roe v. Wade, we found it kind of difficult. But with Roe v. Wade gone, then we had the Biden administration. Well, Biden administration was not going to enforce the Comstock Act. And thankfully, the Biden administration's heading out, so we are going to be under an administration that could enforce the Comstock Act if they so desire. Now, we know that attorney generals throughout the United States sent CVS, Walgreens, and other entities letters saying that the Comstock Act is in play and that they could be held responsible if they try to distribute abortion-inducing drugs. So I think we got a lot of stuff going for us. We just got to utilize this to the best of our ability.
Yeah. So if you are connected with city or county elected officials, your mayor or city councilman, county councilman, and you want to attempt to do this to make your own city or county a sanctuary city or county, Mark can help you do that. Mark Lee can help you do that. He has the language that's necessary to introduce as a city ordinance, as well as the backing of U.S. constitutional attorneys who will defend those ordinances in court against lawsuits. At least as of a couple years ago, the attorneys were willing to defend it for free. Is that still the case, Mark Lee?
Yes. So the attorney that I work with is Jonathan F. Mitchell, a former Solicitor General for the state of Texas, architect of the Heartbeat Act, and he represented President Trump in the Colorado Supreme Court ballot case. So he's the one that got Trump back on the ballot in Colorado. And as long as people go through us, and we have to write these ordinances right. We don't want any rogue ordinances that are going to cause a loss. We don't charge anything. We'll do all this for free, at no cost to anyone involved. And in the ordinance we give, we also give a letter from Jonathan Mitchell that says that if there's a lawsuit, he's willing to represent the city or the county at no cost to the city, county, and taxpayers. And so we believe in these ordinances. We believe in this effort, and we do want, like in New Mexico, for instance, the New Mexico Supreme Court will likely rule against us. We're okay with that, though, because we believe that we can take this up to the Supreme Court of the United States. And so in Missouri, in New Mexico, in Colorado, we can do this anywhere. We just have to have, I believe the majority of America is pro-life, but what we're lacking is courage. So if you have a elected official that has courage, that is willing to stand for life, someone who's kind of pissed off at where things are going in America, then feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on Facebook, Mark Lee Dixon. And we're willing to help out. And like I said, I will be around. If you want to connect with me, I plan on going all over the state of Missouri. And so a lot of people want to see and connect with in the next week or so. let's see what we can do for Missouri.
Yeah. Okay. So, so a lot of this I already stated here. What can we do? Stay informed, stay abreast of what's going on in the legislature. Again, it starts at the beginning of January. It's going to go through mid-May. We're going to try and keep everyone up to date as legislation starts moving. I know that really the top two priorities, talking to several legislators, are going to be IP reform and something to undo Amendment 3. And we'll see how that takes shape. Pray. We absolutely need to be a praying people. Prayer shifts. Sometimes it feels small and weak, but prayer shifts the course of nations. That is absolutely biblical, and I've seen it. I have many stories of praying into things, praying for Supreme Court justices, praying for legislation in Missouri, and seeing the answer to those prayers. We must be praying, and really, I think, as close as it was, the indictment a little bit on Amendment 3 is an indictment against the church for not praying and investing in shifting our culture as much as we should have been. And we need to continue to pray for our culture, for our leaders, and work to shift our culture toward one of more righteousness and justice. It's the foundation of God's throne. And then, as I already said, be prepared to come to Jefferson City with your friends. There's going to come a day or two, I can almost guarantee it, we're going to need that overwhelming support in the Capitol building. Where's my clicker? There it is. All right, we've been answering questions all along, but we'll intentionally pause here, I guess, and at the end of the other questions.
So we've got a question about why doesn't Missouri require a 60% majority to pass amendments? That's a loaded question. You want to take that one?
How much history do you want? The quick history is, as I understand it, following the Civil War, there was a move across the country. About half of our states have an initiative petition process. And there was a thought across our country that if the citizens were allowed to circumvent the legislature, perhaps the Civil War could have been avoided. I don't agree with that. That's direct democracy, and our nation was founded as a constitutional republic and not a direct democracy. And but it is what it is, and we should be working to reform our initiative petition process. There have been several attempts over the last few years. The most dramatic and catastrophic one recently was this last legislative session. And that was crazy. If you were watching that, I won't recount that, but we definitely need to reform the process. There are a number of ideas. The chief amongst them is called concurrent majority ratification, or CMR. But there are other ideas. Either way, we should make it absolutely harder to change our constitution and circumvent our legislature. I wouldn't mind, this is my personal opinion, I wouldn't mind if it went away completely. About half the states in our union do not have initiative petition, and they seem to be surviving just fine without it. So it's not a necessary thing, and in fact it creates more harm than good. We voted on 5 amendments this year. That's crazy. Now 2 of them were through our legislature, but 3 of them were through initiative petition. So
So the problem
we shouldn't
with
be
initiative,
amending our constitution like this all the time.
Right, but the problem with initiative petition is any citizen can write basically anything they want,
Yeah.
get enough signatures, put it before a vote of the people. There's no hearings. There's no back and forth process where the language is clarified. The legislature goes through so many steps before they pass bills, to make sure that things are written well. They have hearings. Not always, but there's several steps. They have hearings.
Yeah,
there's public hearings. There's
at least 2 public hearings, at least 2 chances for debate on the floor of the House and the Senate, and at least 10 separate votes in the process of a resolution before it's placed before the people for a vote. Whereas I could write an amendment to our Constitution for free peanut butter and jelly sandwiches for all Missouri citizens. And if I get enough signatures, we're all voting on it, and there's no vetting of the language. It's not a good process, in my opinion. So, but we won't rehash that too much. Any other questions here?
So another question we had was, is there a way to limit funding for amendments from outside of the state?
There are legislators looking at limiting funding from outside of the country. But we have interstate commerce for good reasons in this country, and so limiting it from outside of the state probably would not stand against the U.S. Constitution, and probably isn't a good idea anyway. But they should be able to limit funds coming from out of the country, like George Soros money, or the other, I forget his name, but the guy from, I think, Sweden that was putting money into Amendment 3.
So, okay, what's this one say? Contact the newly elected House members before they commit to Patterson. Yes, please contact your newly elected House rep.
Yeah.
We've already contacted ours. You may have to do a little bit of research to find out who that person is, because they're not going to be listed yet on the House website. But you know who you voted for, and your person is probably different than our person.
Yeah. 54, I think 54 House freshmen are incoming. So a third of the House is new. And if they ran on a platform of wanting to be a change agent, well, here's your first opportunity. Be that change agent right out of the gate.
There's a discussion about legislators passing something that would require those who gather signatures to be registered voters in the district they are working in. That's an interesting angle. I know I talked to several signature gatherers on this amendment who told me that they had been paid to come here from other states. They weren't just out of their district. They were not even Missouri residents. One that I talked to, she came from Texas, and the ACLU gave her money to come and collect signatures in our state for an amendment in Missouri. So can something be done to limit people from out of state coming and trying to get signatures in our state when you don't even live here?
Yes, things like that were discussed last year. They didn't really go anywhere. And I'm sure they'll be discussed again in Jefferson City. I don't know if they'll go anywhere or not. But those ideas are out there and being discussed.
Okay, does the Speaker of the House have to be a member of the House to be Speaker?
I don't actually know that. That is not the case in the U.S. House, but I don't know the rules for Missouri House. It's probably irrelevant, but I mean, yeah, I can look into that. It's an intriguing enough question that I will look into it, but off the top of my head, I don't know the answer to that. What else we got?
We've had a couple questions about various court challenges. One was about challenging Amendment 3 based on the fact that it covers more than one subject. That has already, they've already tried that. the Supreme Court basically didn't care. Another one, a question earlier that we had was, I'll have to scroll back up to find it. It was about a court case, which I think was also part of their case at the Supreme Court. Oh, the misleading language. That's already been heard in court, correct?
Yeah, that was part of the challenge that happened in October, or no, it was end of September.
Yeah, end of September.
Where they attempted to address really 4 different things to get Amendment 3 off of the ballot. One was multiple subjects, and the confusing language, and all of that stuff failed at the Supreme Court. So unlikely that another challenge that does the same thing would be able to go anywhere.
Should we use IP to put an amendment on the ballot to overturn Amendment 3 before we fix the IP process? What do you want to do about that?
I'm not saying no, but it would require a mammoth effort to do that. The proponents of Amendment 3 spent about $6 million collecting signatures. And the pro-life side wouldn't have that money. So it would be a massive statewide volunteer effort to try and collect 400,000 signatures. I'm not saying it's not possible, but the scale of that, to do that without really any budget to do it, it would be a massive undertaking. So is it possible? Yeah, it is. And there have been citizen-led efforts to do things like that before, but I know a couple people, I think I saw one of them at least on the call, that has tried that in the past and could probably speak directly about how difficult that would be to do as a grassroots movement. So not on abortion, on another issue, but it's a massive undertaking. And really, I mean, we have a supermajority of Republicans who should, in theory, be pro-life in both the House and the Senate. We shouldn't need IP reform. We should be able to pressure our elected officials to do what's right and to put something on the ballot that would repeal Amendment 3. And if we get toward the end of session and they're not willing to do it, then yeah, this summer might be the summer of signature gathering if that's what we need to do. What other questions?
Talk about churches speaking out. Somebody mentioned if the Catholic Church had spoken out sooner, like the Catholic diocese. Yeah, I know.
No, Rosie.
Okay, where's that coming from?
Yeah, churches, parachurch ministries should have been more vocal. I was very encouraged. There were churches and parachurch ministries that were speaking out in ways that I didn't expect. I expected to be more disappointed than I was with the silence of the church. And so on one hand, I'm very encouraged by elements of the church that were vocal on Amendment 3. And then there were other elements of the church. If you follow me on Facebook, you've probably seen a post recently where I did call someone out, or not someone, an entity. I don't need to continually call out people. But yeah, we definitely need, if we do this again, and I hope we do, I hope there's an effort to overturn Amendment 3, and maybe we're looking at that in the fall of 2025 if the governor has the guts to put it on the ballot in 2025. But we're going to need more of the church, and we're going to need the grassroots hounding churches and parachurch ministries to get vocal about it, particularly the ones that weren't vocal about it this time around, to say something. You know, you had your chance last time, you missed it. You got a chance again to redeem yourself. It's time to be vocal about, the voiceless and most innocent among us who don't have their own voice. So,
yeah, and some of that, as the citizens, we can put pressure on our elected officials. The way that the government of the United States is set up, the people are the sovereign. Essentially, they work for us, and so it's up to us to put pressure on them to speak out on issues that are important to us. I know Governor DeSantis was very outspoken in Florida and came forward boldly and strongly against their amendment, and I was personally disappointed that Governor Parson did not do more. He did say a few things, he put out a statement, but it was too little too late, I feel like, and really wish that he had been more vocal earlier on in coming out against Amendment 3. But we have to be vocal as well when we contact our representatives in government and make our desires known before them.
yeah.
So,
All right.
yeah, there was a question earlier about the actual case, and so I don't have a link to that. I don't know if you can put a link to that somewhere for people that if they want to look up the actual case. I think someone put a link to a news story about the Planned Parenthood case, but you have the actual lawsuit printed out over there. So I don't know where you got that from, but if you could put a link to that maybe
if you want to, after we finish this call, I will drop a link to the case on our Bound for Life St. Louis group. So anyone wants to go look and follow that case on CaseNet, all the filings are there, and the attorneys, if you want to, be praying for people by name, for the judge by name, or following what's going on, or read the case itself.
It's Brian put it in there, I think.
Yeah.
Looks like. Yeah. 221 pages.
Yeah. So.
It's a big case.
All right. So, thank you for coming and participating. We'll have more coming, and I'm sure, Brian's on the call. Brian and I will be talking and trying to coordinate. We definitely want to see Amendment 3 overturned. And if you want to reach out to me in any way, that's my email address there. Bound for Life, the National Movement. That's our website. If you want to go learn more about Bound for Life, you can find both the national movement as well as our local chapter and the chapter in Kansas City on Facebook or Instagram or X. So thank you all for coming. God bless you all, and have a good evening.
Good night.